Welcome everyone to today's webinar. We generally do a couple of webinars a month. Some of them are overviews of ClubExpress for people that are either new to ClubExpress or considering ClubExpress as an association management solution. And more often than not, they are deep dives into particular modules, whether it be the control panel or emailing or document modules. So we do deep dives into particular pieces of functionality. But today we're doing one that Samantha pretty much established a couple of months ago, and this is sort of role-based. We did one a few months ago about ClubExpress for membership directors, all of the tools that you could use to help manage your members and manage engagement. And today, this is going to be ClubExpress for communication directors. So it's not about a particular module. It's about how you use the features and the tools that are available to you to help you do your job. So let's take care of a little bit of housekeeping. All of the phones and microphones are muted, so any questions that you'd like to ask should be entered into the chat window. At the end of Samantha's demonstration, we'll revisit the chat window to see if there was anything that was not covered in Samantha's demonstration. And this is particularly useful for people that are watching a recording of this webinar. All of our webinars are recorded, as are our training videos, and you can get to them on the ClubExpress Cool Stuff page. So if you go to clubexpress.com, click on Cool Stuff, and then on the left side at the bottom, you can click on Webinars. You can see the schedule of upcoming webinars and a list of recorded webinars. So you can see at the very bottom there's a ClubExpress for membership directors, and we did a feature demonstration, an overview, and a new control panel. And right above the webinars tab on the left is a video tutorials tab. And it's worth going there. There are a couple of videos that we published over the past couple of months that are worth taking a close look at, because the way the homepage and custom pages are edited and maintained, that is updated and improved, how to use the page builder, and now managing people, both members and non-members, are coordinated under one tool. So there's a managing people video. We also published this week a video on updating your member profile. And that's something that you could actually send out to your members, because this is really how members update their own profile, change their email address, change preferences for forums and things like that. So it is by far the most viewed of all of our tutorials. And since it's been updated, it's a good idea to let people know that it's available. And all of our videos are actually housed on YouTube. So if you're watching a video on YouTube, you can click on the subscribe button and optionally on the notifications bell so that you'll be notified when any new content shows up on YouTube from us. And finally, if you are using ClubExpress, and particularly if ClubExpress is working really well for your organization, we'd appreciate it if you would go to clubexpress.com/reviews and click on one of these sites and leave a review so that other people that are evaluating association management solutions can have the benefit of your experience. Samantha, I'm going to stop my sharing. You should be able to pick it up from this slide.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. So as Alan mentioned, about a month ago, we started to sort of reintroduce webinar style that we touched on a little bit before I joined ClubExpress. So it's really to give administrators in your organization a big picture experience. So most of our webinars are going to discuss a really specific module or a specific feature, but we want to show you how all of those work together and all of the tools that you should have in your toolbox as either a membership director, a communication director, an event coordinator, a treasurer. And so to see how all of those things work together, how they can all make your job easier, touching on tools that you may not have thought to use in your capacity as someone who manages your organization's communications. So that's really the focus of today. What we're going to talk about is the different types of tools that we offer. So what are one-way communication tools? It's pretty self-explanatory. The communication's only going one route. It's not a two-way street. So those are going to be things like your newsletters, any announcements that you're making where you're not really inviting your members to participate in the conversation. And that's not a bad thing. most organizations send out a monthly newsletter or some type of announcement communication to their members. So we'll talk about the tools that you would use to generate one-way communication. And then we'll also talk about two-way communication tools. So when you're really looking to spark conversation, not just between you as administrators and your members, but also between the members themselves, allowing your members to communicate with each other, to communicate with you, and the tools that you would use to do that. And we'll talk about tips and tricks that you can use to organize all of your communication tools. So in today's demonstration, we'll talk about the one-way tools that we have. We'll talk about emailings, we'll talk about text messaging, and we'll talk about the two-way tools that we offer, blogs, forums, and surveys, where you're generating communication going from you as administrators and coming back from your members, and then also communication between your members. So giving them the chance to really feel like they're part of a community and not just visiting a website, reading a newsletter, and paying dues. So we'll also touch on that two-way communication feature that we offer if you have our mobile app, which is our chat feature. And then we'll talk about, lastly, organizing your members, making sure that when you get ready to send out a communication to your members or send out an announcement or set up a forum, that you've organized your members in a way that helps you facilitate those conversations. So without further ado, let's go ahead and visit our demo club. So I'm logged into our demo balloon club as Martin Smith. As many of you might know, Martin Smith is the administrator of Northwest Balloon Club. He also happens to be a regular member. So the most basic form of your one-way communication is going to be a blast email. And for that, of course, we'll pop into the control panel and the communications tab, which is where we're going to be spending most of our time today. So blast emailings, we're not going to go through a step-by-step tutorial, but we're going to talk about some of the tips that you should be mindful of when you're sending out these emails. So the first thing that I want to talk about within emailing administration, on the right-hand side under the configure button, let's take a look at your emailing options. So under emailing options, there are a couple of things to note. Your from email address and your from name. Now, whenever you sign in and get ready to create a blast email, if you have not set up a default from address or name, our system is going to use the email address that you used when you signed up for your initial trial. That's going to likely be your administrator or your webmaster's email address. And the name is going to pull the name of whoever has signed in and is crafting that email. But you as an administrator can change that email address and the name to appear as, just like we have it here, info@ClubExpress or info at your club or association name, as well as maybe the club name, maybe it's the name of your president. The default options are not things that are set in stone. So just like we have this default option here and in other areas of your site, you can always change those as you're crafting the individual item. So when you're crafting this email, you don't necessarily need to keep these items there. You can change them on the fly. So really, these are time savers, and they also help with consistency. So if you have coordinators who are helping you send out this newsletter and you have these default options set up already, you eliminate that sort of extra step of maybe checking their work or having to go back and change some of those items if they forgot to change it when they sent the email. And at the very bottom, you can track your opens. So we'll talk about the different tools that we have so that you can see whether or not your members are actually engaging with the communications that you send. Of course, you can create templates, which just make your job easier. Templates within our emailing system are a huge time saver. You have to set it up one time, and then you can use the template over and over again. And then, of course, your social networking links so that your members can reach out to you, not just through your website, but they can also keep up with you on social media. So back in our emailing administration page, when we talk about configuring an email and we add an emailing, some of the main things to note are the different types of distribution lists that we offer, and of course, the basic information. So we talked about under basic information, having that default from email address and from name. So if I go into edit basics, because I've set up those defaults, they're auto-filled for me. But as I mentioned, I can still back these out and change them to reflect the communication that I'm actually sending. And at the very bottom, Not only can I track my opens, which I've set as a default option because I do want to see how my members are engaging with my communications, I can also personalize my emails. So if anyone has read any articles on marketing or has taken any courses, personalized communication is one of the ways that you can sort of make sure that your members pay attention to it. So they feel like you're talking to them as opposed to a giant group of people. So allowing personalization just gives you the option to use tags within your emails. And what that means is if you've ever gotten an email that says, hi, Alan, we're having a sale at Old Navy this weekend. The person who's typing up that email is not sitting there and typing hundreds or hundreds of thousands of different names every time they send that email. They're using personalization tags. What that does is it scrubs your site for the name of the member or non-member that's being contacted, and it inserts that in that email for you. So it looks like that communication is being personalized to your member. It's just another way to make your members feel like they're really being spoken to individually, as opposed to, again, just being part of an organization where they are simply logging into a website to check things out and then going back about their day. And then, of course, your distribution lists. So towards the end of the webinar today, we're going to talk about different ways to organize your members and your non-members to make your communications more effective, to make sure that you're reaching out to the right people. When you take a look
Samantha, just before
Yes.
you jump into this, will you just go back to the basic information for a moment? Because there was a question about how do you schedule an email. So in this case, you could either say when it's ready for delivery, you could say, as soon as I say it's ready for delivery, I want it sent as soon as possible, meaning in the next few minutes, or you could schedule it to go on a particular date. You can't schedule an email to go out on more than one date. So they're all individual items. So you can't say, we're going to schedule an email to go out, a newsletter every month, because they're all actually different emails in different contexts.
Mm-hmm. Great question.
And the question is, will we have the ability to schedule at a specific time of day? We don't have the capability of doing that at the moment. It's something that we can add to the wish list.
Yes. And the time that it will actually go out when you select a day separate from now is 6 a.m. Central, about 6 a.m. Central, maybe 6:15. So within our distribution list, of course, you have the opportunity to create your own distribution list. And you're really using the distribution list that we've created to build the list that works for you. The chances are that the group that you want to communicate to, we probably have a list that works for you. We have dozens of different distribution list options that you can combine to create the perfect list for you. And many of these are pulling data that you've applied to your members or your non-members in other areas of your site. So for example, members of a selected interest group. If you are using interests, which are things that you can ask your members to check off as being interested in, either when they sign up, when they new, or throughout their membership, you can use those interest categories to send communications to your members. Now, you might be thinking, well, why wouldn't I communicate to every single member? Because then I'm going to get more engagement that way as opposed to communicating with a specific group of people. Well, that might be the case, but if you're looking to really target your communication and get the most bang for your buck, try using some of our targeted distribution list groups. Not only do we have interest groups, you can also email selected members of a committee that you've created or even of a forum that you've created. So again, you have ways of categorizing and tagging your members and your non-members with interests, with data points. Why not use those to your advantage? If you want to email members about an upcoming safety seminar that you are hosting, maybe you don't want to email everyone in your organization, just those who are interested in safety. And if we take a look at some of the other groups, of course, email, we can send out communications by demographic. We can send out communications for members by location. And at the very bottom, if none of those categories really work for you, you can, of course, select individual members and non-members from your member and non-member databases. On the right-hand side, you can see that you can add and exclude members as well. So if you'd like to email your interest group, but you want to exclude a couple of individual members that maybe don't want to receive those types of communications, or you as an administrator think that the communication isn't going to be helpful for them, You can exclude individual members or entire groups. You can email everyone in your organization and exclude a specific city if you're a national or a statewide organization. So while there are a lot of different distribution lists, it might seem overwhelming, but that's just because we want to give you the tools that you need to effectively communicate with the rest of your organization. And I mentioned templates. You can create templates within an email. You can also create templates on your emailing administration page. I won't go through creating an entire template. We have plenty of tutorials that go over creating templates and actually creating an email and building an email. But I wanted to point out some of the basic items that you should pay attention to when you're actually crafting an email and getting ready to send it to your members. So in the same way, one of the features that we added maybe about a year and a half ago, it's a relatively new feature that we have, which is text messaging. So text messaging is not something that is included. There is an extra charge to add text messaging to your club or association. The charge is $2 a month for a toll-free number that you use to text your members, your non-members, to send out quick communications, quick updates, maybe to let people know that an event has been canceled, maybe to let people know that there's a new survey available that you'd like your members to participate in. You can use text messaging for really anything. Some important features to know: our text messaging features use the exact same distribution lists that our emailing feature has. So if I select add message, and I select edit distribution list, again, I have not only the distribution list that I may have created that I've been using for my blast emailings, but I also can use, again, those same distribution lists that I'm used to using for blast emailings. When you're sending text messages, one of the things to know is that because of FCC communication laws, we can't allow you to send members or non-members text messages without their explicit permission. So if you haven't already enabled text messaging, when you enable it for the first time, note this quick notify request on the right-hand side. This lets your members know that you've enabled text messaging and sends them a quick system email to let them know that they have to visit their member profile to enable text messaging. And it gives them instructions on how to do that. All they do is check off a box that says that they give you permission to text them. They can opt out at any time, and you're all squared away. So if we take a look at some of the text messages that we've sent with our demo club, we see a lot of the same icons in the maintain column that you're used to seeing when you visit email. So there's a lot of crossover with working with both of our major communication tools. On the right-hand side, you can see that we can edit the text message. We have a lot of text messages that are drafts that haven't been sent yet. So we can edit those, make copies of those. And we can also take a look in the same way that we do with our blast emailings. We can take a look at the results of those text messages. So we can see how many were not allowed versus how many were sent. Within text messages, you don't necessarily see how many people read those messages the same way that you would within your blast emailing feature. But you can see how many were sent versus not sent. And if I hadn't mentioned it previously, when you are sending text messages, you're only paying for the text messages that were actually delivered to the user. So if you send a text message to a group of 150 people and only 100 of those users have opted in to receiving text messages, you won't be charged for everyone, just those that have been delivered. So if you are interested in text messaging, we do have more tutorials available that talk about sending text messages, that talk about how to set those up. And of course, it's a quick call to our support team to let them know that you would like to enable text messaging on your website.
Just before you jump ahead, there was a question about, well, where did you find the text messaging? It's here on the communications tab. It, as she said, it costs $2 a month plus a couple of cents per delivered message. And we actually have a tutorial about it that shows how to enable it and all the details on that. And can you go back to emailing for a moment? Because there were a couple of questions about this.
Sure.
Let's see. And they just want to show how you would personalize an email. So if you just add an emailing, and if you go and add something where in the basics you say that, yes, you want to be able to personalize it. Then when you go into Oh, we just need a test
It
there
gets
again.
me every time.
Yeah, it does. Okay. And now just drag in any column text. And when she edits this, now she can say, type in a tag or type in the word dear or hi there, comma, and insert a tag. And so which tag do you want? Well, the first name. And then if she says insert tag, it puts in this little placeholder for the name. When you actually send the email, the placeholder will be replaced by the member name or by whatever tag you chose. Note that if you send out a test to yourself, the tag will be there, not the name. And the other question is related to this, and it does confuse people. And she says, can we email people who have signed up for a particular event? And the answer is yes, but it's not done from here. This is kind of the blast emailing function. So what you would do is you would go into the event itself and let's see, that would be, on the website, go into an event. And if you go into any event, you can opt to email to that event.
So
All right.
this is perfect.
All right. So what happens is you go in there and you get the same list. If you try to email, you get the same list as you did before as far as the distribution list, except they've added a few more items. And you'll see the first few items of the list are really interesting. You can say everyone who's registered for this event, all non-members, all unregistered, people who have registered but haven't paid for the event. So you can be very, very specific about how you deal with these people. So this is really very, very powerful. The other question was, is there a way to email individual members who don't belong to a specific category, just random individuals? And yes, at the very bottom, you see that could be any member, any one member, and you can select the member, add them, select another member, add them, select another member, then save it as a predefined list. So you don't have to do that again. So we'll get Daniel, and you're just going to add, and then you pick somebody else, and you just make this a predefined list, and you don't have to do that again. So I think that'll cover what we've got at the moment, and we'll follow up a little bit later. There's a question of how do you see who opened the email? I think that's in one of the reports, is it not?
Yes. So within, if we go back, and important to note, within events, when you are sending out a blast emailing, that blast emailing is going to remain within event emailings. That email will not show up within your emailings from the communication tab. So if you're sending an email through an event and you wonder why you're not seeing it in the communications tab emailing section, it stays with the event. Within our emailing feature, the reports that are available are actually available for every single email that you send. So as long as, let's go ahead and see if we can find an email that's actually been sent. So within emails that have actually been sent, you have actual data and results that are available for that email. If you check the results of a draft email, all you're going to see is that the email is actually just a draft. So if we take a look at results, we can see opened versus not allowed. If we take a look at the reports that are available, we have emailing results by status, opened email status, and failed delivery. So let's check open emailing status as one of our reports. I am going to select HTML. It's the report output that I use when I just want to check something quickly without opening up a new program. It opens up the report in a new tab in my browser. So I can see here that we have one user who has not opened this particular email. So the reports that are available allow you to see individual people that have opened your emails. The results icon gives a broad overview of who's opened your email and who hasn't. One of the things that you can play around with as far as communications is changing your subject lines. That's another marketing tip that you can pass on to anyone else who's responsible for sending emails within your organization. Just making sure that your subject lines are snappy, that they maybe give a snippet of what exciting announcement you have within that email. The subject line is the first thing that your members and your non-members are going to see that determines whether or not you actually open that message. And I can attest that if the subject line doesn't look interesting, I might wait a few days before actually opening that email and potentially miss out on time-sensitive information just because the subject line didn't look particularly interesting. So you might also be concerned with, well, what happens if members just aren't getting my emails? They want to receive those communications, but maybe something is wrong with their email address. Maybe you're getting caught in a spam filter. We have a section within our communications tab called bad emails. So within our demo club, we have a lot of what I call dirty data. So we have a lot of bad email addresses. However, within your organization, hopefully you wouldn't have nearly this many problematic email addresses. You might when you first sign up with ClubExpress and you do your bulk data import. Maybe you weren't totally on top of managing email addresses that were problematic because you didn't have the tools to do it. Every time you send an email to members and non-members, your site essentially keeps track of, well, what happens to that email? Did it get there okay? Was there a problem? And what type of problem was there? At the very top of your bad emails page, you have a bulleted list of the types of failures that you might experience when sending an email and what they mean. And at the bottom, you have a list of all of those problematic email addresses. Now, some of them you might look at them and say, oh, I see that maybe Lisa forgot the L in Gmail. I can go ahead and fix that very quickly. And then Lisa's email address is fine. But maybe you have a couple of email addresses that you have no idea why they're problematic. And maybe you just need to reach out to the members separately to let them know that something's wrong with their email address. Maybe it's a temporary failure. Temporary failure means that it's temporary by nature. So it's not something that's a problem forever. Maybe you just need to reactivate that particular email address. So keeping track of problematic email addresses is just another way to make sure that your members and non-members are getting the communications that you're sending out, especially if they haven't opted out of any of the communications that you've been sending and they're just not receiving them. So those invalid addresses, addresses that are poorly formatted, maybe just temporary failures, those are all things that you can keep track of that maybe you weren't able to keep track of before. So it doesn't seem like it's second nature to you, but those are things that you're able to see. Now, you as an administrator can see a bulk list of problematic email addresses, but whenever a member signs in and they visit their member profile, let's take a look at Martin Smith's profile. So under Martin Smith's profile here, we have a current email address listed for him, but when he visits his profile, he can see in bright red text that there's a problem with the email address that he has on file, at least one of them, because your members can include, different forms of communication. So Martin Smith can visit his invalid email address and change it right from his member profile. So we do make it relatively easy for your members to see that they have a problematic email address so they can correct it on their own. But of course, you as an administrator can correct it as well, or at least push them to correct it. So those are some of the one-way communication tools. I'll touch very briefly on system emails, which is in the setup section of the communications tab. Now, these are emails that you as an administrator or communications director don't have full control over when they're sent, but you can control the text that is actually sent. So on the system emails page, you have a list of dozens of different boilerplate emails that are sent out when a user takes an action on your site, whether they register for an event, purchase a gift membership, or sign up for your organization or renew their membership. There is a system email that gets sent to them confirming their action, maybe thanking them for signing up, thanking them for a donation. You have no control over when those are sent, but you can, again, control what is actually sent in those emails. On the right-hand side, towards the top of your screen, we're looking at the event registration confirmation. On the right-hand side, you'll see a couple of icons that are different from icons in some of the other rows. Almost every email has an edit icon next to that particular email, and it allows you to edit the system email text that is sent. You're seeing a lot of these tags that are sent. Again, this is to pull information from the event that this particular email is referencing. So all of those tags are going to pull the exact event that that particular user may have registered for. You can change which tags are present. Maybe you don't want some of the tags that are in here. You can also add additional tags. You can change the cadence of the email. Maybe your organization is a professional organization and you'd like your emails to be a lot more formal. Or maybe you're a local crafting club and you want your communications to be a little more friendly, maybe add a couple of jokes here and there. It is entirely up to you. That's why we give you the ability to edit these system emails. You're also looking at a version of what we call our content editor. So you have the ability to change some of the text formatting. You can insert links using our link builder. Of course, we have plenty of tutorials that teach you how to do that. You can add photos. So if you'd like to add maybe a banner photo at the top of some of these emails, you can do that as well. When you've made changes to a system email, you'll see a green check mark in the column just to the left of that edit icon. That green check mark indicates that the email that is actually being sent at this time is the customized version of that email. To the right, you'll see a delete icon. That doesn't delete the email, it deletes your changes. So that icon really is a revert to original icon. If you decide that you no longer want to use the customization that you've created, you can revert back to the original email. Whenever you make changes, I always recommend that you use the email icon to send yourself a test, just to make sure that maybe if you've added a photo that it displays properly, if you've reordered some of the items within your email, you just want to make sure the font shows up okay. Definitely send yourself a test just to double check that everything is on the up and up before that particular email is going out to everybody. So those are our one-way communication tools. And let's move on to our two-way communication tools. So again, when I say two-way, I'm really talking about you communicating with your members and your members being able to communicate back to you in an efficient way. And all of those tools, again, are going to be in our communications tab. So some of the major things that either maybe you have employed on your site, maybe you're not using them to their full capability, or maybe these are modules that you've thought about adding, but you just maybe don't have the time or you don't see the use. So let's talk about blogs. Now, I am currently looking at our control panel in edit mode. When I take a look at modules, because I'm in edit mode, anytime I select a module, I'm going to visit the back end of the module where I'm configuring the module. If I want to see what my members see, of course, I can navigate to those modules just by clicking the links within my menu, but I can also click the toggle button that says switch to view mode. Now, when I select any of these modules, I'm visiting the side that my members or my non-members will see. And you'll see that there are a couple of modules that appeared only in view mode. And we'll talk about that in a minute. First, let's take a look at blogs. So blogs are a really great way to disseminate information to your members and allow them to sort of informally or briefly communicate back to you by way of comments. Now, you can have really anyone write a blog for your organization. It's up to you. You can make any member a blog author. They don't have to be an administrator. They don't have to be a coordinator even. They become a blog author. And the rights that they have as a blog author are really just creating a blog post, reading comments, managing comments. At the top right-hand corner of this particular post, you can see that Ben Richards, who happened to write this particular blog post. So if we scroll down, we can take a look at the actual post. And at the very bottom, we see that we have a couple of comments that have been added to this particular post. So whenever you have blog posts, you can communicate a new post to your members in any number of ways. You can send a blast email letting your members know that there's a new blog post available. Your members can also subscribe to different blogs that you post on your website. They subscribe to a blog, they get notified when there's a new post. And of course, then at the bottom, you can allow your members to comment on certain posts. Whenever your members visit the blog post, they're able to easily leave a comment, either with their name or with a nickname. And the photo that appears with the member is going to be the photo that they've added to their member directory listing. So if they don't have a photo, it'll just be a shadow of a person. But that's one way that you can invite your members to have a conversation with you about important topics. So your blog posts would likely be items that are important to you and your members. Maybe it's a development in your field that you want to talk about. Again, you're opening up those lines of communication with your members, sharing important information with them while still getting that feedback from them. Some of the other items that you can use to disseminate information, we have news articles. So, your news and articles feature, again, is just a way that you can spread information to your members in a relatively non invasive way. And by the way, your news articles modules and your blogs modules each have widgets that can be inserted on either your homepage or custom pages. Those widgets are going to show you a rolling list of the newest blog post or the newest articles. So, if you're afraid that maybe your members won't necessarily see or navigate to these pages on your menu, try throwing those widgets on your homepage, letting your members know upfront that there's new information available. And if we take a look at some of our news articles, by just visiting the pages, we see the article. We see, these are formatted articles. So you're able to throw pictures and links in there. You're essentially using our advanced content editor to create a very miniature custom page that all you're using it for is an article or sharing information with your members. Now, to get into more conversational communication, let's talk about our discussion forums. So, discussion forums are something that a lot of organizations sort of getting on their feet find to be really overwhelming. But they're a wonderful communication tool that you can use to allow your members to not only communicate with you as administrators, but communicate with each other. Because the whole reason that your members joined is to be a part of a community. So, why not try to recreate that communal feeling digitally? We give you a couple of different ways to do that. One of those is within forums. So, forums, if you're not familiar with them, are just an online conversation. You can think of it like a giant party. When you're at a giant house party, everyone isn't sitting in a big circle and having the same conversation, at least not at my parties. Maybe you guys host different parties than I do, but you have some people off in the kitchen talking about one thing and a couple of people maybe in the backyard talking about another. That's really what your forums are going to be. So, for example, on our demo club, we have different categories of forums. So we have some general forums at the top of our list, followed by members only forums. We have special forums. And at the very bottom, because Martin Smith is an administrator with the Northwest Balloon Club, he has access to our administrator forum. Our administrator forum is a ClubExpress run forum just for administrators of clubs and associations around the world using ClubExpress. They're from all types of organizations, asking questions, sharing tips and tricks. Even if you are in a cycling club and you're reading a tip or a trick from someone who's in a financial planning association, you might think that your organizations have nothing to do with one another, but those tips and tricks from that organization might be helpful to you. So definitely take a look and communicate with other people in your community, in the ClubExpress community. So within forums, when I select a forum, I can view a list of the conversations that are happening in that category. So within each conversation, of course, let's take a look at wind speed. There's a back and forth, right? So there's one person posting their initial question, and then everyone else who replies to that question or that thought that that member has. You can also separate your forums out based on interest, based on committee membership. You can create forums that are just for your board members. You can create forums that are open to everyone in your organization. You can even create forums where a moderator chooses who gets to participate and who doesn't. So you have a lot of options. And again, we have many tutorials that are available that talk about discussion forums, how to set those up, how to use all of the capabilities of forums so that you're getting the most for the time that you're spending getting this module set up. And one of the last ways that we'll talk about for two-way communication is, of course, surveys. So surveys, again, where you're asking your members questions or even asking them to vote in an election or let you know what types of events that they'd like to see in the coming years. Surveys are a wonderful way, not just to reach out to your members to get general information from them, but to gauge how happy they are with your organization. We have about 20 different question answer types that you can use in surveys. So you can really gather any information from your members that you'd like. And of course, elections. So we just came up on a time of year where most organizations are holding officer elections. Use our surveys module to host an election. Within surveys, you can see that a lot of our surveys are in test mode. I see that again because I am looking at surveys as an administrator. You can create surveys and elections, go through them multiple times to test them out, make sure they look the way that you want them to look, they function properly for you, and then release that survey to the general public. You can add surveys to your menu, as we've done with this particular demo club, but you can also leave surveys off the menu and simply email links to those surveys to your members.
Samantha, there are two things I wanted to point out to people that are in the session here, particularly about forums. We have 3 forum videos. If you go to your control panel for a moment
Mhm.
and click on the support tab and you could look on the recent videos look on the recent videos. You'll see that there are 3 videos, one for using the forums, and this is a very useful video for you to send out to your members because it shows them how to use the forums, how to configure their preferences for email notifications and things like that. We have one for forum moderators who are members who are not administrators, but these are people that can manage particular forums. Sometimes they're subject matter experts. Sometimes they're just there to keep the discussions organized and root out troublemakers and such. And then you've got the forums administration video, which is about how to set up forums and configure all of that. So that's something that you should take a look at as administrators. Look at the administration moderation one, but by all means, send out the using your forums video to your members, because a lot of members don't use the forums or don't know how to get notified about things. The other thing is that you didn't have it on your list, but there's kind of a variant of the survey module called ad hoc forms.
Mm.
So you could make a web page, for example, that's a photo contest where you're asking people to enter a photo contest. So you're going to ask them some questions. I think Fly-In Photo Contest is there. You might be able to take a look at it. But what happens is you can ask them questions. You can see who has answered. You can attach files to it. And you can actually charge money. You could say, if you want to participate in this photo contest, give us your information, upload the 3 pictures, and give us $10. So it's kind of a variation on a survey and a custom web page kind of put together with the ability to ask for money. So that's kind of cool.
Yes. And yes, our ad hoc forms, it is like a big sister or big brother to our surveys module. It uses the exact same question answer sets. So you still have those couple dozen different question and answer types that you can use. So one of the last communication tools that I'll talk about that is two-way would be our chat feature. So I spoke about this just a touch at the top of the hour. Our chat feature is available to those organizations who have purchased their mobile app. Now, mobile app is different from the mobile website that you have. Your website is mobile friendly, so it works on a mobile phone. But the mobile app is a branded app that is built just for your organization, where your members can not only access all of the features that are on your site normally, but they have access to additional features, which are chat and meets. Today, I'm going to focus on chat. We do have a webinar available that talks about our mobile app in more detail, but our chat feature is one that is available not just on the mobile app, but on the desktop as well. So even if you don't want a mobile app for your organization, you think that it's too much, or you think your members won't really use it, but they might use their chat feature, you can enable the mobile app, not use it as a mobile app, but use the desktop version of your chat feature for your members. It's real-time chat. You can have chat groups, which we call channels, for all members, or you can separate your members by interest, by committee. You can separate them in a lot of different ways. You can create essentially chat rooms for your organization where people can send real-time messages to each other, including photos, emoji, all of the things that you would normally see in something like a WhatsApp or other type of communication tool. So if you aren't really familiar with our mobile app or what it does, take a look at our webinar, because if you're, especially now that your members may not be able to see each other in person and have those conversations that they're used to having at maybe meetings or events that you host, try enabling some of these communication tools that are not just two-way between officers and members, but two-way between members and members, allowing your members to really feel that sense of community within the organization that they joined to be part of a community or have that communal feeling. So let's talk about some of the ways that you can make sure that your members are organized and that you can get the most bang for the tools that we give you on your website. So, things that you can use to organize your members, mailing list categories. In our communications tab, under the setup section, you have a list of mailing list categories that we've created for you and that you can create yourself. Mailing list categories are ways that your members and non-members can get automatically added to a specific distribution list based on an action they take on your site. So, for example, we have system mailing list categories that you can see by looking in the maintain column and checking for that word system. Let's talk about our donor category. Whenever someone makes a donation on your site, they're added to a mailing list category, either donor, which is the default, or a mailing list category that you've set up yourself. What that means is they get tagged with that particular data point. You can use that mailing list category to contact those members in the future. So it's something that you can create as an extra distribution list aside from the dozens that we've created for you. So instead of maybe using the overall donor category, maybe you have one specific donation fund that is a really big deal for you. Maybe it's different from all of your donation funds. Maybe you typically run donations for community organizations, but you have one donation fund that is going back to your club specifically. Maybe it's to repair your clubhouse. Maybe it's to add new equipment to your clubhouse or anything like that. You can create a separate distribution list for a very specific donation fund and use that mailing list category just to apply to members who donate to that fund. There are extra ways of organizing and categorizing members based on an action that they take on your site. So you don't have to go back into that donation fund and see, okay, I need a list of everyone who donated to this fund because I want to send them all an email. You would have already created that list just by creating a mailing list category and applying that mailing list category to that donation fund when it's set up. Now, I understand that donation funds might be a treasurer job, but the purpose of these webinars is to also see how your role interacts with other roles as it relates to your ClubExpress site. Of course, within your organization, your role interacts with other roles on a daily basis, but it also interacts with those roles on a digital basis. So the mailing list categories that you set up can be used when your treasurer sets up a donation fund. One of the other things that I talked about were member interests. And another organization item would be member additional data. And for that, we'll talk about the people tab. And I believe that I touched on this when I spoke about membership directors and their role within your organization. I said the same thing to those folks as well, that their role ripples out and the actions that they take when they're organizing members and managing that database can affect other roles within their organization. So when we talk about setting up member interests and additional member data questions, those are items that are found in the people tab under both website modules and the setup section, respectively. So those are items that can be asked of your members when they sign up, when they renew, or throughout their membership. So when your members sign up, you can ask them to check off from a list of interests that you provide as an administrator. They can select the interests that interest them. So you can ask them what types of hobbies they have. You can ask them maybe what types of speakers they're interested in hearing if you're looking to hire more speakers for some events that you might host. You can also ask additional member data questions to not just ask about their interests, but maybe ask about their experience. Maybe you want to know how many years of experience they have in a particular field, whether it's a hobby field or a professional field, and use those points to reach out to your members further. Maybe you want to have a speaker at one of your events that is just talking about those getting started in your field, whether it's a professional field or a hobby field. You may not necessarily want to email your entire organization, especially if you have members who have been in that field for 20 years. Maybe you just want to email those folks who say, I only have 3 to 5 years experience in this field. So, speaking with your membership director to ask them to maybe set some of these communication items up for you to make your job a little bit easier. And again, to just add more and more data about your members. The more you know about your members, the easier it is to keep them happy. So, why not use those communication tools to not only make them feel like they're part of a community, but to get the most that you can out of your organization and out of your website? I managed to talk for quite a while, Alan. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, we actually have a couple. Most of the questions are things that really are deep dives into particular modules. How do you do this in a particular module? How do you do that? And again, I suggest looking at the tutorials, looking at the help screens. But we have a question, for example, here talking about mailing list categories. But the thing about mailing list categories used to be that mailing list categories were only for non-members. Now, and you said, what happened if you have a member who is a member of the press category? So now it's about people in general. One of the questions here is, so we hire judges for events. I'm thinking of creating a judges category and putting them to people as non-members with that category flagged. Well, you could put people in a particular mailing category, but the emailing categories really are about emailing. He's saying, can the system produce mailing labels? We're thinking of things like Christmas cards, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what you could do is you could use a data export and then take the data, put it into a spreadsheet or put it into a database, and then create a filtered list in your database or your spreadsheet, which would then feed something like a mail merge in your word processor and all of that. So you'll see, I think, active members plus sponsor birthday. There's a few of them there that have a lot of data in them, and you can sort based on things like additional member data and things like that. So that pretty much wraps it up there. The question is, can admins approve blogs or forum content before they're posted? Certainly for forum content, you can decide whether or not a forum is set up to require approval. So Samantha is now clicking on, since she's the administrator here, she can click and say, oh, here are the messages that are set for approval. And you can either approve them, you can reject the approval, you can edit it before it's approved. If you see somebody spelled something wrong or have some wrong information, you can correct it and you can approve that. I don't recall the blog posts. It's likely that blogs have to be set up for approval, but I just don't remember offhand. There was another question is, well, can only members post to a forum? Well, a forum can be visible publicly. You can take whether or not anybody can see them. First of all, they'll only see the things that are flagged as publicly visible. And if they are not logged in as a member, it's read only. So sometimes you may want to show a forum as available so that people say, hey, I really want to participate in this. I better join the organization. And sometimes it's simply, it's going to be not even displayed at all to the outside world. Let's see, it says, we need a place to track member traits that the member can see but not update themselves. Would this work? Well, in what's called additional member data, you can decide whether or not the members are allowed to update the information. So one of the items here is editable by at the very bottom. It says who's it visible to and who's it editable by. So you can actually have questions that only the admins can edit, and you can also decide who can see this. So it says this is right above it, visible to member. It can be visible to the public or only to the member or only to administrators. So you can have different data that you're collecting that has very specific visibility, and then you can use this to drive emailings and such. So that's pretty cool. So in the meantime, we've run up against the clock. We thank everybody for coming. Samantha, any closing words?
Just thank you for joining.
Thank you, everybody. Have a happy new year. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you at the next webinar.